brought to you by the EveryDollar app. Start budgeting for free today. We just got word a few moments ago. Surprise, surprise, 45 days from the election, the Fed dropped the interest rate.
By half a point, 50 basis points to a range of 4.75% to 5%.
So that wasn't possible 4 months ago or 8 months ago, but right before the election, it's possible.
It's amazing the timing of that.
It's just sus. Yeah.
Good.
All right. So they seem to be trying to claim that the interest rate changes are related to the election here, which is interesting. I would have suspected, as this is referencing to the fact that this is like one of the first times that the Fed has decided to, or the first time they've decided to actually start cutting rates since the latest interest rate hike due to inflation, and they chose to go with a 0.5% increase in interest rates. So this I was expecting I expect the interest rates to be increasing due to the labor market. Inflation does seem to be trending down, but it's actually not below 2% or that close to 2%. I think it was around 2.5%. And so that would likely indicate about a 0.25% drop or hike in the interest rates to accommodate increased inflation kind of continuing to go down and settle. But they did choose a larger adjustment due to, I believe, the labor market. But this video seems to be related to the election, which is interesting. We'll see where they take it.
I'm using a good millennial word here.
Impressed.
Sus. I learned that from George. He taught it to me. So
That was at least cute, I gotta say. It's a fun little back and forth they have there.
oh, yeah. I mean, come on, people. Can you not look at this and go, are you folks in America that stupid that you don't look at this and go, well, that's suspicious time?
All right, well, that's coming out strong, I guess, but probably fair coming from Dave Ramsey. But I'm not sure exactly if he's trying to highlight a particular candidate in particular here, or who would be behind this. I'm not really sure who he is suspicious of, I guess, other than the situation.
Boys
Within
and
spitting
girls.
distance of the election, and then all of a sudden they go, all right, pull the lever.
As if it's going to change anything between now and the election. It's not, by the way. But it sure is good PR. Yeah, because one of the things that the current administration is getting hammered on is the state of the economy. And it's really hard to keep a party in office.
I see. He's basically stating because economy is a little tough at the current time that they are basically stating that probably Democrats are pulling this lever, quote unquote, in order to kind of make presumably Kamala Harris, or at least the Democratic Party, more favorable to the broader market and to the U.S. citizens based off of this change. But I'm not really sure if that is, I'm not sure if that's how people normally perceive it. I'm sure there's usually a delay between when this impact occurs. And so it's interesting that they're saying at this exact timing is when they would choose to do this for party purposes, but we'll see where else he goes.
Office, Republican or Democrat, when the economics are bad during the presidential election year. And so right up on it, there it is, just drop.
Best part is whoever takes office will then take credit for all of this.
And here's what's interesting. Mortgage interest rates.
Yeah, so what George was saying is that whoever takes office can take credit for this, which is arguably beneficial to any candidate coming in, which is what I had mentioned, which is it's going to have a delayed effect. And so likely this means that whoever is coming in is going to be able to claim basically victory on inflation cooling down. And so they're setting up a win for the next president effectively based off of this timing, or at least an easy victory for the upcoming president. But they seem to be implying that this is particularly trying to sway for a candidate.
Are the lowest they have been since February of 23, about 20 months ago. In the last almost 2 years, we have the lowest mortgage interest rates. Very quietly, they're down, and the market has not taken off and boomed. The real estate market has not boomed. And there's a lot of reasons why. Jade and I talked about this on yesterday's show, George, and you brought it up at the break that some of it might be that people have a 2% mortgage and they don't want to move.
So inventory
to a 6% mortgage. So
yeah, so they made a couple interesting points just there. I think one of which is they are highlighting the fact that interest rates have been so high for so long. So I'm not entirely sure how this would be favorable to a particular party, or especially the existing party, since most folks will likely remember the struggles that they've had with inflation for the last few years. And so if anything, I would expect that to be a negative sentiment towards the Democratic Party for the work that they have done towards inflation, and that it hasn't really completely cooled at this point in time. And so I would expect that would be a larger portion of what folks are having top of mind. I guess this is referencing some type of recency bias is what they're sort of alluding to here, which could be the case. And then they also highlighted the fact that housing market has been tough as well, especially because there hasn't been that much housing inventory. And they referenced how a lot of folks probably have a low interest rate, which is true, especially if we're going back a couple of years, because interest rates kind of grew quite a bit in the last 2 or so years. You could probably have a mortgage that's about half of the price for the same value of home in like 2024 as you did in like 2020 or 2021. And so certainly folks are not going to give up on a great deal that they have. So we'll see if they continue down the real estate market or if they go back to the political side of this.
They're holding their home off the market, and that's slowing down the speed, the veracity of the real estate market. I've got another theory. I brought it up yesterday, and I have no idea if there's any credence to this at all. It's just an idea. But that some people might be waiting on the Harris administration or the Trump administration to fix their life, and they're going to wait till after the election to decide whether they're going to buy a house or not. So they're just kind of sitting on the bench waiting on the election to roll out because they...
Yeah, that does seem to happen. For some reason, certain individuals believe that certain things are going to happen as soon as a candidate gets in. Obviously, that could be somewhat true for the stock market. Obviously, the stock market is trying to bake in as many assumptions as possible. And so the moment a candidate is in office, then you can probably make certain predictions on what type of policy they might have, how they might impact the economy broadly speaking, and which companies might be doing better or where you want to put your money over the next few years. So they will be baking in that expectation. So whether that's a optimistic expectation and they start to raise prices, or a pessimistic perspective, that can definitely be priced in pretty early once you have the candidate finalized. And so hopefully folks aren't actually waiting for a candidate to come into office to figure out any financial situation they're currently in. Definitely the sooner the better on these topics. There's no time like the present to try to make the most out of what you have today. And so hopefully folks aren't doing this. Definitely wouldn't recommend. Certainly, I'm sure some change is possible at the shift of the candidates, but most actual policies that these candidates are going to make are going to take quite a bit of time, and it's going to take even more time for the impact of those to be seen. So definitely shouldn't be waiting for some candidate to come in and potentially make a massive policy change that could benefit you in the short term.
Made the mistake of believing that who's in the White House actually matters more than who's in their house.
That's a good phrase. It's a great way of saying that. I think definitely you need to try to take as much ownership as possible. I think there's really no one who's going to be looking out for your best interests like you are. And so really the best way to improve your situation is with your own two hands. And so you should be trying to actively pursue this day in and day out, not necessarily for particular political reasons or elections or anything else. You should be trying to make the best out of your situation every day.
So it does matter, and some of these ideas that are being debated matter. None of these personality characteristics that are being debated matter. None of them. But the ideas should be debated, and you should be upset. Not upset. You should be, none of you should be as upset as you are. My God, people, calm down. But anyway.
It's interesting that he just started off. Maybe this is supposed to be some type of clickbait title or something like that, but he just started the segment of how suspicious it is that the Fed lowered the interest rates so close to the election, and then immediately started to highlight the fact that he doesn't actually believe that who's in the White House actually impacts folks' lives day to day, and seems to kind of be veering off of that topic. And really interest rates, generally speaking, actually. So we'll see if he circles back around to go back on it.
But neither one of these people are going to change your life. But some of you are sitting on the sidelines waiting because you still think that one of them is going to buy you a house. And they're not. Neither one of them going to buy a house. They don't. Neither one of them have a buy a house program as one of their policies. We're going to buy Dave a house. I've been doing this a long, long time. I'm old. None of them have ever sent me any money. They've all asked me for money, but none of them have ever sent me any money.
Definitely good points. I think certainly it is tough, though potentially some over exaggeration or under exaggeration here. Most folks consider themselves getting benefits from the government from like maybe some programs or something like that. But actually a lot of folks, and I'm sure Dave, being such a big proponent of getting a home, while he does advocate paying it off as soon as possible, many folks actually get a sizable portion of taxes written off legally by having a mortgage and writing off that interest payment. And so this is actually a very common way that most average folks are actually getting some type of benefit from the government. And while they aren't handing you cash, they're technically taking less away. And it is still one of the largest impacts for the average American. So he is definitely benefiting from this, and most of the folks who are listening to this would likely end up in that case as well, or other things like student loans can also impact this as well. But classic Dave with his tough love stance. So we'll see where he continues.
Many of them have raised my taxes and raised my taxes under the idea that I'm not paying my fair share.
So that I would have to look into a bit. I think my understanding is that actually current tax rates are actually historically low at this point in time. I know for most of at least what I'm suspecting is that it's most likely that tax rates are going to increase over the next decade or so, just due to how historically low they are at this moment in time. Potentially some exaggeration. I should double check, but I've definitely heard large numbers, especially for high income earners, well past like 50% if you're in the highest tax bracket. And in order to even get close to 50% nowadays, you'd probably have to be in a very high taxed state and maybe even a high taxed city on top of that in order to get to even majority of your income being taxed. So most folks are definitely below that. And obviously we all know the super rich who might even be paying less than us on average for taxes. So it's actually historically low. And so taxes would likely be increased by a sizable amount in the future.
Which when I pay a whole lot and you pay nothing, I'm not sure how that's fair. But okay, anyway, I'm convinced the fair is where cotton candy and the tilt-a-whirl are. But so anyway, all that to say, I think that's a hit in this market. What do you think?
Well, I think the supply and demand issue still is there. There's not enough supply because no one's letting go of their 2.5–3% mortgages, and therefore until we see some of that move, I don't think the housing market as a whole is going to shift. But I do think for those that have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for a rate to go down, because it could save you a few $100 with the rate cut like this. That could make it affordable for a lot of people who are ready to buy. They're out of debt. They have the emergency fund. They've got a healthy down payment.
It won't.
Yeah, so this actually seems to be mostly a segment about the real estate market and the fact that likely this is going to benefit folks who are looking for a new home. As one, this makes it more affordable to get a new home, and this could also help create like a positive feedback loop where if interest rates are lower, then the folks who do have a 2 or 3% mortgage rate currently and are not trying to enter into a new mortgage with a 7% plus interest rate on it are actually going to be slightly more inclined to sell if they were on the fence. Maybe they have other job opportunities, family, just looking to make a change in their life. Having a lower interest rate is going to make it easier for them to make that decision, even if it's a 4 or 5% mortgage rate that they're going to enter into if the other factors outweigh it. So this could definitely be a good time to start looking into the housing market, or potentially to start taking advantage of the market now that things are starting to cool down. So we'll see where else they take it.
It won't by the election, though, because the Fed rate is not a mortgage rate. The Fed rate is what banks borrow from other banks at. It affects, by extension and implication, mortgage rates, but mortgage rates are formed by the bond market, not by the Fed. And so if the Fed lowering rates tends towards mortgage rates going down, which it usually does, it has to filter through the bond market, and then that will take another...
There'll be a lag.
That'll take another 30, 45 days. So that'll be post-election before you see any benefit from that. But it's...
Yeah, so I think it makes some great points. It's definitely not directly. It's not like the Fed lowers rates and then boom, your mortgage rate immediately starts going down. Though mortgage rates do seem to have been starting to trickle down a little bit already. So that is a great point. And he's also highlighting himself the fact that likely the positive benefit of this is going to happen post-election. So election is probably just a good starting point to start into this topic for him.
It's all about perception is what this is.
Yeah.
This is a PR move. Pretty much like during the congressional elections, midterm stuff, Biden came out and said he's going to forgive all student loans.
Oh, that's right. That's good timing as well.
Yeah. And everybody knew he couldn't do it, and the Supreme Court ruled against him. He couldn't do it. Everybody, you can't do that with an executive order.
But he can say, well, I tried.
And he goes, mean old Republicans. But it was a political
That's what we call strategery, Dave.
Well,
strategery.
That's what the other party called it. Yeah. That's a funny story. Anyway, George W. actually thought he invented that, and Saturday Night Live invented that. He told me that in an interview.
I miss the simpler times.
Create your free EveryDollar budget today, the simplest way to budget for your life.
Well, didn't actually get too much into the election portion there. Seems to be much more related to actually the housing market and how that could be impacting the everyday individual overall. So definitely was a bit quick here for Dave, but Dave is always an entertaining individual to watch. Thanks for watching, and if you liked what you saw, hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.